I'm here at InfoSec 2024 with Kev Eley from Logrhythm. Hi Kev, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Question on everyone's lips. First and foremost, Logrhythm, what is it and what problems are you trying to solve?
Well, Logrhythm is a next generation SIM technology. We work with organizations to help them detect and respond to all manner of different cyber attacks, whether those attacks emanate from outside of the network or whether unfortunately they're a result of insider threat activity. You know, we see an increasing amount of cyber attacks across the entire world. I think it's only going to get more and more frequent. And so really Logrhythm's technology is designed to be used by security operations centers and teams to really reduce the time it takes to detect and respond to the cyber attack, ultimately reducing the risk of some kind of very serious event taking place.
So the right information at the right time in the right place in the hands of the right people, you could say.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That is really interesting. So what are some of the threats? You know, obviously your technology kind of aggregates a whole bunch of data, but in like a European context or even a global context, what are some of the threats you're seeing to companies and organizations at the moment? You know?
Well, we see an increasing number of threats from a range of different types of adversaries. I mean, the classic scenarios of spear phishing or whaling, ransomware, malware-based attacks, but even organizations where unfortunately they have some kind of misconfiguration event that's not malicious in intent, but unfortunately a technology team perhaps makes an error in their configuration and that can lead to some kind of data loss event. So all of those types of events are very, very prevalent across, you know, really all manner of industries and geographies. So yeah, that's what we're seeing.
Excellent. So obviously your technology pulls in data from all kinds of different sources. So probably I'm going to know the answer to this question, but in your opinion, kind of being able to kind of integrate with different technology stacks and stuff, is that something that's important for businesses today?
It's really, really important. The surface area attack for organizations is getting increasingly bigger and bigger and bigger as organizations in a lot of geographies transition and migrate to the cloud. You know, as an organization starts to use public cloud, private cloud, you know, the surface area attack increases. The ability to be able to harvest telemetry from those systems, from those applications, and be able to understand the context of it is really, really important. And that for us has really been what's unique about Logrhythm is our wide support of different types of systems, no matter what they are, whether it's security devices, whether it's applications, databases, technology. So really, really important that an organization understands their network topology, they understand their architecture and their environment, and in particular, they understand the critical assets that they're hosting within their environment and what it would mean if those assets were compromised.
That's really interesting. You mentioned a moment ago that word insider threat, insider risk that, you know, I've been hearing a lot around the trade show floor.
Yeah.
So is that kind of the latest, greatest real problem, and kind of what is insider risk to you? How would you define that?
I think it definitely is a problem, and it definitely is a challenge, and it has been a challenge for a number of years, really, for organizations. But essentially, how I would define it is an individual within an organization that is perhaps an employee or a contractor that is trusted with information that goes rogue. They go rogue and they decide to steal information or compromise systems, and it can be for a variety of different reasons as to why they do that. It might be that they feel disgruntled as an employee. It may feel that they've been mistreated. It may be that they have some situations taking place in their personal life that causes them to want to commit some kind of nefarious activity, malicious activity. But because they're already inside the network, unless an organization can detect those users and activities, it can be a real problem for them because, you know, they've already got, in some cases, the keys to the kingdom, so they can already take data. So it is something that organizations really need to be very vigilant about in terms of making sure. And of course, we would naturally wish that all individuals and all employees and contractors and so forth can be trusted. But unfortunately, that's not always the case.
No, indeed. There is a line though, and kind of where would you see it? You know, because there's this interplay really between respecting privacy of users and the intrusion of too heavy-handed an insider threat investigation, and obviously the security of the company. You know, do you have any thoughts? How do companies and businesses strike that balance between being creepy, spy, and protecting stuff that is?
You know, you're so right to call it out because there is very much a balance to be struck, and of course, different countries and different areas treat this in a very different way. both from a regulatory standpoint and a legal standpoint, but also from a cultural aspect. You know, this notion of Big Brother watching you in some countries in Europe is very much against the cultural fabric of that society. So, you know, practical steps that an organization can take is first and foremost transparency to employees when they're at work for a variety of reasons, including protecting their own data and their own professional requirements and capabilities. You know, they do need to be monitored. And that can be placed into things like employee contracts. There's security awareness training that obviously can be undertaken to explain the types of information that's being analyzed and being monitored and being looked at and so forth, to make sure everybody's comfortable and okay with that. And of course, you know, that communication with management and managers explaining to their employees is really, really important. But if an event does take place and it requires investigation, it needs to be delicately handled with legal, with HR, obviously with the individuals, managers and leadership teams, and needs to be performed in as robust manner as possible, but also with the understanding that you know, everybody's innocent until proven guilty. So there's some practical considerations that I think, you know, the cybersecurity industry can borrow very much from law enforcement and from, you know, from general societies in terms of how to treat people in that situation.
Absolutely, and you touched on this a moment ago as well, in that also the first step is having employees understand what the expectation is of them for good practice. You know, a lot of people, I've worked in places where, you know, I've hit something like a data loss prevention rule, for example, and I've been like, okay, so yeah, that's the wrong way to do it, but what's the right way to do it? So I think often kind of the education and the user awareness piece, almost placing guardrails around users at the same point, can often head a lot of this stuff off at the pass, right?
Yeah, it really is the case. I mean, we talk so much about technology because we are a technology vendor. You know, in this world of SIM and UEBA and monitoring networks and so forth, but there always needs to be a process aspect surrounding it and a governance aspect surrounding it, as well as then obviously the people that can make the practical decisions associated with what information they're being presented with by the system. So that classic people process technology really does come into play in the world that we live in terms of helping organizations utilize a SIM solution to, you know, to ensure that they're, you know, guarding themselves from risk.
You're absolutely right. It's important, you know, it's great to have this massive data that can be used, but the right people, the right time, and the right use cases need to be defined first. Companies need to understand what they want to achieve.
Absolutely.
It's been really interesting to chat to you, Kev. I wish you every success at the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much. Cheers.